Good morning and welcome to the Century Business Technologies webinar with one of our partners, Watchguard Technologies. My name is Jeremy Bays. I am the VCIO here at Century, and what that means is your Virtual Chief Information Officer. I am your link between Century, Watchguard, and all that we have to offer. And today we want to take a few moments of your time and talk to you about endpoint security. So you might be thinking, well, what is endpoint security? Do you have a house? Do you have an alarm? Great. What does that do for you? Do you have cameras? Great. What does that do for you? Do you have a 911 on speed dial? Great. What does that do for you? All those things are factors are important to physical security and they relate to endpoint security or cyber security as well. So today, Sean and Rick from WatchGuard Technologies are going to take some time and they're going to try to simplify some of these advanced concepts so that we can understand exactly what it is that they offer and ways and places that we can keep our business safe. So Sean, Rick, thank you so much for being part of our webinar this afternoon and I'll have you take it away. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Sean Banahan. I am Director of Channel Sales here at WatchGuard. The way the presentation, we've kind of lined it out today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes WatchGuard WatchGuard, a little bit of our history and why we do what we do, how we engage with the channel. And then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Rick Hannam, who is the area sales manager for WatchGuard. And he'll talk a little bit about the product itself and kind of how do we deploy it, what it looks like, that kind of thing. So, Rick, do you want to take us away to the next slide here? And I could talk a little bit about WatchGuard as a whole and set the stage. Perfect. So when I walk through these presentations, I don't like to go through all the bullets. So I'll leave some of this on the back, on the behind me, virtually behind me, and you can look through the bullets. But what I want you to take away from this slide is that WatchGuard's been around for 27 years. We're one of the pioneers in the firewall market, hardware firewall market. We've been doing this a long time. But also, we don't have a lot of brand recognition, right? We're the giant that kind of sits behind our channel community, and that's by design. WatchGuard doesn't invest a lot of technology or a lot of revenue or time into brand recognition. There are a couple of exceptions. We've just recently sponsored a hockey team here in Seattle, so that was a rare thing for us. But by and large, most people that I engage with don't know WatchGuard. Sometimes they know the red firewall box, but they really don't know our company. But you can look at these stats. We have over 250,000 customers worldwide. Every 2 minutes, somewhere in the world, a WatchGuard firewall is activated. So we've been around. We've been doing this a long time, and we do it all through the channel. That's how we scale our business. So I'm going to talk about this in the next couple of slides, why we're engaging with you with Century Business, what that looks like, and kind of our strategy. Rick, do you want to take me over? So this is a big data-driven slide. I'm not going to read this left to right. Instead, I'm going to focus on a couple of things, and that is, first, why WatchGuard or how we develop our products, the strategy we use. So over the last 10 years, we've really been focused on building out a unified security platform, one platform top to bottom that provides a number of critical security features, everything from multi-factor authentication to wireless security, including the firewalls. More recently, some monitoring and detection capabilities. Part of that is the endpoint. We've done that primarily through acquisitions. It started 10 years ago with an acquisition that brought us into the Wi-Fi space, and most recently with an acquisition we just did with a company called SciGlass that brings network detection and response to our product platform. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about acronyms, but I am going to say that over the last decade, you've seen WatchGuard progress. It's not necessarily from a hardware company, but introducing features around cloud, around this unified security platform, all driven to drive this idea of zero trust or zero trust framework. And Rick's going to talk about that as we progress through the slides. Before I move on from this, though, there's one other thing. Sorry, Rick, could you back up one quick thing? In 2019, from a partner perspective, this is where WatchGuard kind of diverged, and it's really critical that customers understand this, I think. And I'm going to try to vocalize and make sure that it's easy to understand. So in 2019 or so, we started to bring out cloud and SaaS services, right? Software as a service that we provide to our partners. This is a real differentiator from WatchGuard. So when I talk about all of the acronyms today, when you hear XDR and NDR and MDR and all of these acronyms thrown at you, we are not the only technology company that's talking about these acronyms. We're introducing those features, and I think we have a very solid, robust platform that we can show you. And the Endpoint product, particularly, is one of our leading technologies. But we aren't the only one doing that. The way in which we do that is different. The way we offer this to partners, it's about empowering our partners to go and address these needs for you. So we provide these services. We have no direct sales model. We aren't selling to you, the end user. We sell to our partners, and we provide a service that they can white label and then add their value on top of it. That's really critical, and that's really where you start seeing WatchGuard diverge itself from our competition in 2019 and beyond. And there's a reason that I'm getting into that, and I think that's critical. And that's reason is, as we go forward, Rick, you can go to the next slide, is it provides scale to our business. I'm going to talk about over the next slide or two about the threat landscape that's present in the world today, and how we as a company have kind of built our strategy, our developing strategy, everything I've just talked about, why that's important. So let's, Rick, you can move on from the title thing. I think we're going to go into the scary slide. I love this slide, or I hate it. I'm not sure what I like. This slide is meant to terrify everybody on the phone, and it is, right? The world that we live in today is terrifying. Security breaches the security threat breaches that people are facing, threats that they're facing, have increased. Ransomware has been around for decades, but it continues to increase. You've got AI-driven capabilities that hackers are using today. You're seeing living off the land attacks. You're seeing email credential fraud, all kinds of things like this, and these new vectors that everybody's going to have to protect against. And so the security landscape is increasing. The threat index is increasing. The stat that this is leading with is 54% of companies have experienced a third-party data breach in the past year. And when I talk about data breaches and how that impacts the world, everybody thinks Sony, they think Target, $20 million from Target. They think, public utilities and these large organizations and ripe targets that foreign actors want to focus on and these terrifying things. But the reality is this is hitting every business across the spectrum. WatchGuard really, I think our technologies really fit well in the small to mid-sized space. And that is where a lot of these threat actors are focusing. This morning, when I opened up Google and I did a search, and I was kind of prepping for this presentation, just this morning, there are two companies. One is a school district out of Ohio, and the other was a hospital out of Michigan. They've both announced breaches this morning. Both of those are mid-sized organizations. It's happening, and that's just this morning. So if I look back yesterday, I'm sure there's another two. So the threat vectors are increasing. This is becoming a real problem. Next slide, Rick, please. All right. So the business challenges, the reason these threat vectors or these threats are becoming are getting through, the reason that these companies and organizations are suffering these is because they don't have the resources to look at these in real time and address all of these threats. Unless you're an organization that has a dedicated IT security staff that has the latest technology, they've built it, they've customized it, you're going to have to work with a channel partner, someone who knows what they're doing. And that is kind of where I've been going here. That's why we've really focused on the channel. If you look at this slide, it's talking about the lack of visibility, the lack of patching, the maintenance pieces of this, and that most breaches are a human element. Most people, it's the happy clickers. They're clicking on emails and allowing folks into your networks. There's another piece of this too, and that's I've already mentioned. It's the lack of specialized IT security personnel to watch and monitor this in real time. And that's going to lead us into the product in just a moment. But I think I have one more slide to talk about, Rick, before we get into some of that. And that's the factors that are increasing the exposure to these threats, right? There's an evolving cyber landscape. We've seen, I mentioned briefly, AI. This is becoming a real problem, and most technology companies right now are introducing AI components to combat this. We ourselves have an AI built engine that we use in our technology to allow us to do real-time threat analysis. This is, AI is allowing these hackers to scale their activities and their attacks much more quickly and make it much more real to you. You get an email. I've got an email just recently from our CEO. He was asking for a PowerPoint deck And I assumed when I read it back, it wasn't that unique, but I assumed it was a PowerPoint deck that I just recently presented on, and he was asking for that PowerPoint deck and a logo and asked me if I could send the link. And it ended up being a phishing email and the start of a phishing email. And luckily, I wasn't silly enough to click on it. Thank God. but it's that kind of it's that kind of outreach that we're seeing. And a lot of that is driven out by AI. Now they can bring personalized information, and they're using AI engines to grab all of that. So it's these number of threats. The sophistication of these threats are increasing. Remote workforces and these complex environments. Um, the complicated management demands. I would also put in security, cybersecurity insurance, and things like that, and those driving the needs to maybe check a box to make sure that you're addressing these threats, and then the shortage of staffing. All of this leads to why we have doubled down on the channel and why we work with organizations like Century Business to really expand and scale our business and how we're addressing these threats. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how we do that and some of the technologies that we use, particularly Endpoint, to help our partners address these threats. And I'm going to turn it now over to Mr. Rick Hannam, our area sales manager, to talk a little bit about our Endpoint security product.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Sean, for the foundation of really what we're going to go through today. So, as I was telling the folks before we started this conversation, my role, I feel, is to speak in a way that people understand, because I realize that not everybody on this call is a technical expert, and that's okay, because we have technical experts that you can rely upon, both at Sentry and they rely on the folks at Watchguard. So, with that, I just kind of want to go through a little bit about, endpoint security, because that's the focus of today's conversation, and give you some highlights and points and things to think about. And then, of course, you can come back to your folks at Century Business and talk to them about the solutions or the answers to that. So, with that, um, at the onset, I was mentioning that, kind of relating endpoint security to home security. When you look at what you have it in your home, you have things like locks, but locks can be picked, they can be broken, doors can be kicked in. So having locks are important, but they're just the first line of defense. The next line of defense might be something like sensors, cameras, alarm systems, all those different things, lights that you have, motion sensors. I have all these things in my home to you know, get a bit of a deterrence, but also give the opportunity to have a response or a notification if something does happen, even if you're not away. But of course, if you're away and your alarm goes off, what do you do? Well, that's the third part, which is monitoring. So if you have a monitoring service that can check and see if your doors have been kicked in, while you're at work during the day or in the middle of the night or out of town, then they can alert the authorities and maybe send someone over there as quickly as possible to be able to do something about it and react. So that's kind of the analogy of the home systems and how we protect our homes. Well, how does that relate to the technology? Okay. So when we look at endpoint security in particular, the different levels are really what it's all about. So I'm going to use the term AV antivirus. That's traditional antivirus, and I'll go into a little bit more depth on that. Or endpoint protection, EPP. That's basically another way of saying antivirus. And those are kind of like the locks on the door. They're pretty basic. They kind of prevent what's known. They kind of keep your doors locked, keep someone who's not supposed to be there out unless they have bad intentions to pick the lock or kick the door in. And then we get into things like EDR, endpoint detection response is what EDR stands for. Those are more like sensors and monitoring and all these different things that can kind of see what's going on and send alerts when there is an issue. And then MDR, which is managed detection and response, is the highest level. It's really where someone's overseeing or looking at everything constantly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So analogizing it to a home system, that's really the difference between the levels of security that you can apply from antivirus, endpoint detection response in the middle, and then MDR, the monitor services. So when we talk about antivirus, there's a lot of variables here, and most people, when they think of AV or antivirus, they think of your traditional antivirus, and quite frankly, many people, that's what they have. It's decades old technology. It's been around forever. It's necessary because there's a lot of what we call known malware out there that is readily available. We're aware of it. And if you have an antivirus protection, then you're going to be able to have good protection against stuff that's been out for a while, that's been known. But it doesn't give you enough protection. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about why that's important, because as we noted before, and Sean noted at the onset, the threat landscape, as we call it, is evolving daily. Every day there's a new threat, every day there's a new breach. And so having the basic protection is good and necessary, but it's just not enough. So this is something that I just added this morning. I was thinking about this because it's one of the ways I look at the world from the perspective of why it's important to talk about advanced technologies and advanced security services. This is from our public-facing blog called secplicity.org. Sorry, marketing people came up with that name. Security and simplicity smashed together.org. And so when we look at this slide here, what I'm trying to say is that this is what WatchGuard has prevented in the last 30 days. 3,513,000 threats were stopped by WatchGuard's technology. Okay, so that's a lot. If you look at the numbers, you break down every minute 81. So Sean's talking about a couple of breaches this morning. Well, every minute we're stopping about 81 threats somewhere across the world. And then I want a little bit more specific. This is the last 30 days in the United States only. 73% of what our technology stopped was zero-day malware. 27% was known malware. Well, what's zero-day malware? That's stuff that's never been seen before. It's brand new. Your traditional antivirus would not stop that. Your traditional antivirus might stop the known malware, the 27%, but 73% of what we prevented actually came through and we stopped was what we call zero-day malware. So again, bad guys are smart. They're using things like Sean mentioned, AI. They're using all sorts of technologies to be able to try to stay ahead and change things every single day to make it harder and harder for us to capture. Well, our job is to try to do our best to stay ahead of the bad guys and try to keep up with what they're doing on a daily basis. So keep in mind, like I said, the importance of this conversation really is about zero-day malware versus known malware. If it's known malware, basic type securities, traditional antivirus might stop that. If it's zero-day malware, it will not stop that. So the vulnerabilities will get through. So when we look at endpoint protection versus endpoint detection and response, that's really the difference. Is what are the services that are coming through with endpoint detection response versus traditional endpoint? I won't go through all the details, but really it's all the advanced technologies. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but without going through each one of these points. It's the additional forensic services, AI services, advanced detection, zero-day malware detection that really is the separator between the known malware protection, endpoint protection, and the zero-day malware or unknown exploit technology that comes with endpoint detection and response. So let's talk a little bit about our particular product and how we approach it, because we approach it completely different, even from other competitors that have advanced malware. When you look at the landscape that's out there, things are changing all the time. Not just the malicious activities and stuff like that, but even how you are going to work. You and your clients, I should say. Your end users, all the people that work for you, they go to work. We have a lot of cloud platforms nowadays. People are using cloud applications. We have employees that are either on site, sometimes they're working remotely. People were working remotely before COVID. Were they doing it securely? Hard to say. Some were, some weren't. COVID, even though many people are back in the office, many people are still in some kind of a mixed hybrid environment where they're in the office sometimes and working remotely other times. It is something that is very important that it is addressed how that person is accessing the company's data to make sure that the protection is there regardless of where they're working. And then of course you have traditional people that are in the office, so the same thing. So whether you're in the office, out of the office, whether you're using cloud applications, you want to have the right technology. And then just a little stat at the bottom: 62% of mid-market organizations say that their environments are more complex. It makes perfect sense. I mean, we're evolving how we work, we're evolving where we work, and so it's going to be more complex. And so really, the point is having the right technologies in place to protect you in those situations. Sean mentioned before, we got announced that we are a security portfolio company. What I don't believe he said earlier today, but I think it's kind of an important element, is that WatchGuard has always been built for, we used to call it SMB, SME, small to medium-sized business, small to medium-sized enterprise. Now we kind of use the term mid-market because nobody really knows, what those definitions really are. But the point is that from day one in our origins, that we were really focused on our partners who work with end users who use with their clients who are somewhere between 5 and 500 or 5 and 2,000 employees. That is the area that we've always focused. And so we have a evolving portfolio of services to try to give enterprise grade protection to that type of clients and the partners that they work with, WatchGuard partners like Sentry. So it's a portfolio approach that we're taking as we're trying to stay ahead of the bad guys. Well, how do we do that? We're either acquiring or building companies that allow us to provide these type of enterprise grade securities in a way that's affordable and relatively easy to manage so that you can get the protection that the big companies get as well. All right, so our approach, when I said it was different than the way even some of our major competitors in the advanced endpoint space are, is we use what's called a zero trust application model. So what does that mean? Well, back in the day, if anybody remembers President Ronald Reagan in the Soviet Union, he used to say, trust but verify. Well, we take the opposite approach. We don't trust anything until we verify. And that's our zero trust model. So looking at the layers of protection on this little slide here, what's important more than anything is the little blue circle in the middle. That's your traditional antivirus. Anything else beyond that is what we call the advanced security or the advanced technology that we use to get us to the level of zero trust. And what does that mean? Zero trust, how does it work? 100% of all processes running on endpoints are classified. 100%. So the idea is that nothing runs unless it's been verified. When I say verified, it's either classified as goodware or badware. All right. So if it is classified as goodware, it runs, no issues. Everybody goes about their business day. If it's classified as suspicious or badware, then it has to be further analysis is required. And it does this in a way that makes sure that none of that gets through to the endpoints to your user devices without being classified as goodware. I say it only gets through if it's classified as goodware. So we do this in an automated process. And this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of share. How that process works is that we have what we call a denial list. We have 2.4 billion known malware. Approximately, that number is always changing and growing, but we know things are bad. So if something comes through and it is known malware, it's denied automatically. We have an allow list. Right now, again, statistically, 3.3 billion known goodware that we can classify immediately as goodware, and we can allow that process to run. And then for the unknown processes, we have a machine learning, AI, other technologies that do an analysis on that process or that application and determine whether or not it's goodware or badware. And if it can't be done through all the first three steps, then it goes to our cybersecurity experts. We have a team of people who all they do 24 hours a day is analyze things that aren't classified automatically as goodware or badware. So in that first three steps, 99.98 of that is done automatically, seamlessly. You don't see it. Sentry doesn't see it happen in the foreground. It happens, and then if it ends up in the badware or deny list, there's a notification that says, "Hey, we've got this software. We can't let it run because it's badware. It's not something that it's malicious software. We can't let it run." So in that situation, an end user might go, "Well, what happened? I can't run this." Well, it's been classified as badware, so it's being held, it's being quarantined, it's being not allowed to run on that device so that they don't get infected. So 99.98% of that is classified as automatic. 0.02% is when the human beings get involved, when people have to actually go in there and look at a file and try to analyze it and determine whether or not it is goodware or badware. So automated process, so it's as seamless as possible, and it makes sure that nothing runs on that device gets through into your network and into your end user's, laptop or desktop without being classified first. And so really it's EPDR is our product. It's endpoint detection and response. That's our flagship that really runs all of that. And one of the things to note is that EPDR has EPP or endpoint protection in it. It's just that kind of layers that build upon on top of it. So it's a good, better, best approach. We have different layers uh, of products and services available to you. EPDR is the flagship. It has all of the things that are necessary to prevent against zero-day malware, all the malicious stuff, all the new things that come out on a daily basis. And then on top of that, it can run on Mac OS, Android and iOS phones, on Linux devices, and of course Windows. So there's the different endpoint solutions, and then there's what we have modules to. We won't necessarily go into all the modules, but there's additional things that can be added on top of the endpoint detection and response to give you even more protection or more services. One of the things that Sean mentioned earlier on is patches. Oftentimes, security exploits happen because someone didn't update a patch or patch a particular piece of software. Patch management is a module, for example. Full encryption, if you have encryption needs, we can fully encrypt the data so that it meets HIPAA or other types of classifications where the requirement of having full encryption is necessary. So it's just good to have full encryption, but it's also meets some particular compliance things too. So with that, I mean, that's kind of the quick run through of it. And as Sean mentioned before too, we don't brand a lot because we work exclusively through partners like Century Business. So this is a little screenshot of the elevated train in Seattle, who actually has our Watchguard and Seattle Kraken NHL hockey team, which is one of the first major sponsorships that we've ever done. And the fun thing about that, real quick, is that we uh, won the opportunity to run the Seattle Kraken and the Climate Pledge Arena, which is in Seattle, where the Kraken play, by defeating them on the technology first before we were allowed to have a marketing partnership. So we had to beat the competitors, and I hate to say, not hate to say it, but I guess I can say it was Palo Alto. We were able to knock Palo Alto out of there, take over all the security services for the Seattle Kraken, and be able to have a branding partnership with them. So it's a something that's kind of fun. Like I said, since we don't really have the presence because of partners like Century, is that we go through everybody. Everything we do goes through our partners. We don't really have that visual presence, but it was fun to get something out there. So with that, thank you. And if you have any questions, we can certainly take those as well. Jeremy?
All right, at this time, if you have any questions, we do have a question link in the GoToWebinar. So if you can type those in, we can get those over to our presenters to to answer. As
And if
you're
not,
doing the, go
I
ahead,
was just
sir.
saying, and if not, the whole what I was saying at the onset too, really it's about reaching out to your Century Business Solutions, representative, and kind of talking these things through with them too. That's if you have questions or thoughts beyond what we answer right here, certainly talk to them, and they'll give you all the ins and outs.
So WatchGuard did a great job explaining some things to us. I just want to bring a couple things to the front of the table. According to KSNT, which is a local news station in Topeka, Kansas here, about 74% of breaches involve or are caused by the human element. So AI can be a daunting thing. We hear about that in the news a lot. We hear about that all over. But a lot of times, the person is the easiest thing to exploit. And so a person is tied to technology, is you're tied to your computer, your laptop, your network, your information, your data, whatever it might be. So if we can exploit you as a bad guy, then we can exploit your data. So keeping your information tight, I don't know how to say it, close to the chest, is one of the strongest things that we can emphasize. Don't answer suspicious emails. Don't answer questions about your mother's maiden names or your dog's third cousin's favorite food or things like that. Um, and that'll keep things a lot safer right there.
And Jeremy, when I know I emphasized AI, it's kind of the key word that keeps popping up in everywhere lately. Where we've seen it used in hacking a lot is identifying that personal information. It's so easy to go out and find that about people now, whereas before they had to take the time to go in, look at your LinkedIn profile, look at your Facebook post. Now all of that stuff they're using AI. That's the scalability that it brings you. Being in the industry we're in, we always get wind of kind of the most interesting like hacks and the way hackers are approaching people, and we've seen all kinds of stuff, everything from cyberbullying to get bullying people to get their credentials. We've seen that. We've seen bribing, people trying to bribe people who have left offices or left companies, disgruntled employees, been asked to pay you to sell their credentials. We've seen things like that. So though I don't bring those up as necessarily the most common attempts, but there are all kinds of ways that people are trying to get access to that human element you're talking about. So
Very good. So I have a laptop, and I use my laptop for work 95% of the time. Sometimes I'm at my desk, sometimes I'm at home. Am I secure? On my laptop, I have just my regular Windows firewall. I have Norton antivirus, which came with the laptop. Am I secure?
You want me to answer that? No.
Yes, please, please. I'm sorry. My apologies. Yes.
Yeah,
Kind of like going to a
Norton
doctor and
antivirus.
saying it
Yeah,
hurts when I go
that's
like this.
yeah, yeah. Well, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd mentioned right away Norton antivirus. Right away, that's one of those ones that's known malware. It's again very inexpensive. It's very often free, so included, because it does provide basic protection. So the other part is, I think you had mentioned that you were moving from place to place. You should have a few layers of technology to manage that. Things like VPNs, to securely connect back to your corporate network. You should have things like multi-factor authentication to authenticate your logins to make sure it truly is you, particularly on VPNs, but certainly on anything that you get into that's a corporate device or a corporate application. Should have multi-factor authentication included there as well, just because we know that the number is closer to 90% of all uh, data breaches or exploits come from what you were referring to before, was the 74% of the human element. It's because their human element, a lot of times, it's, well, 90% of the time, it's their lost or stolen credentials, their usernames and passwords that are being used, and see that they either get it through things like Sean was talking about, uh, AI, social engineering, ways they can phish for technology. Phishing is when the emails or whatever, if you click on the wrong link, like Sean was referring to as well. But having a multi-factor authentication also prevents lost and stolen credentials, because if someone has, I always say that, yeah, like when I'm doing public presentations and I'll stand up on the dais there with my laptop doing my presentation, I would say, I can give you my username, my laptop username and password, and you're still not getting in, because you don't have the multi-factor authentication tool that I have that allows me to securely authenticate into whatever I'm doing. So there's a lot of different simple things that aren't terribly expensive. And as I referred to earlier, the WatchGuard's position is to make this relatively affordable and relatively easy to manage and enterprise grade security. So you can take what you were talking about, that example there, Jeremy, and make it very secure, very reasonably.
I would add to that to
Very good.
say
Yes.
there's the partner component. I mean, I look at things from the channel side, and I like to think that, and I believe that WatchGuard has a great unified security platform that addresses all of these different layers of security that you need to put in place. But at the end of the day, like, you need to engage with a professional organization like Century who understands what these threats are. Too many organizations are relying on what a vendor has said, like a vendor meaning a manufacturer, and they're selling to their IT department, and it's like, oh, well, this covers all of these things, but they haven't thought through the whole structure of how they have to put all of these different layers in place. That's the value add that a partner like you brings to the equation, right? We can provide the technology, and I'll be honest, I would love you to sell only WatchGuard, but you as the vendor are going to come in and build a solution that fits your customers' needs, and that's why we've doubled down on the channel.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. So I do want to add just from our point of view, credentials or authentication can fall into one of several categories. Something you have, for example, your username and your password, that's something you have. I'm sorry, something you know, excuse me. Your username and password is something you know. Something you have, maybe it's a card or a multi-factor authentication or an app on your phone, or who you are, like biometric identification and such as well. And here at Century, we can help you with all three of those things. We can help you build better, stronger, greater passwords and such to keep things a little bit more secure. We can help you with multi-factor authentication to take that up another level, and we can help you beyond that as well. So we can really start from the very basic level and move on up as well. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for the time that you've given to us today. We appreciate the information, and we just want to say if you need anything from Century, let us know. We'll be able to help. Those of you on the call, if you need anything from Century, let me know. We are here at 785-354-7000, and we can answer any questions that you might have. We can get you in touch with our partners and such, and we can answer just a host of questions from pre-sales on all the way up to the most advanced questions you might even be able to think about. So once again, thanks for taking 45 minutes with us on this webinar, and we appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.